from Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
There is no ambiguity in the law here. The First Amendment protects speech. It does not protect the use of tents and sleeping bags to take over a public space. Protesters have had 2 months to occupy the park with tents and sleeping bags. Now they will have to occupy the space with the power of their arguments.
So says New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg, but activists say you can't evict an idea whose time has come. Today is the 2-month anniversary of Occupy Wall Street, and people are massing around the city and the country.
I'm standing here in Lower Manhattan where hundreds of protesters are gathering in anticipation for a massive day of action. Thousands are expected to attend. The NYPD has shut down streets surrounding Wall Street. Workers are having trouble getting to their jobs as police ask for IDs.
We'll speak with a New York Times freelancer covering Occupy Wall Street who parted ways with the paper after being targeted by Limbaugh, Beck, and Breitbart. Then the voices of victims of police brutality at protests around the country, a retired New York State judge, an 84-year-old woman pepper-sprayed in Seattle, and a New York City council member bloodied and arrested by police and held for more than 12 hours without access to his lawyer.
I feel afraid. I mean, when I felt the whole forces, when I kept saying, I'm a Councilman Rodriguez, please don't do it, and I felt the whole pressure of his body on top of me and knocking my head in the street.
We'll also speak with Norm Stadther. He's the former Seattle police chief who presided over the Battle of Seattle in 1999. He's now written the book Breaking Rank, a top cop's expose of the dark side of American policing. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Protests are being held across the country as part of a national day of action marking the 2-month anniversary of the Occupy Wall Street movement. Here in New York, organizers have been distributing posters reading, "Shut down Wall Street, occupy the subways, take the square." The massive day of action comes just 2 days after New York police raided the Occupy Wall Street at Liberty Square and tore down the encampment. On Wednesday, the Indian author and activist Arundhati Roy addressed Occupy Wall Street protesters at the Judson Memorial Church in Washington Square Park.
The Occupy movement has joined thousands of other resistance movements all over the world, in which the poorest of people are standing up and stopping the richest corporations in their tracks. Few of us dreamed that we would see you, the people of the United States, on our side, trying to do this in the heart of empire.
We'll have more on today's National Day of Action after headlines. In San Francisco, 95 protesters were arrested Wednesday after occupying a Bank of America branch in the financial district. The demonstrators pitched a tent inside the branch before they were detained. The action came as part of an Occupy march through downtown San Francisco to denounce tuition hikes and budget cuts at University of California schools. The Obama administration has unveiled plans for a permanent military presence in Australia. Starting next summer, the U.S. will deploy 250 Marines for 6-month tours, eventually reaching a force of 2,500 troops. Speaking before the Australian Parliament, President Obama said the U.S. military presence in the Pacific is, quote, here to stay.
So here's what this region must know. As we end today's wars, I have directed my national security team to make our presence and mission in the Asia-Pacific a top priority. As a result, reductions in U.S. defense spending will not, I repeat, will not come at the expense of the Asia-Pacific. My guidance is clear. As we plan and budget for the future, we will allocate the resources necessary to maintain our strong military presence in this region. The United States is a Pacific power, and we are here to stay.
From Australia, Obama flew to the Indonesian island of Bali to meet with foreign leaders and unveil some $25 billion in trade deals at a summit of East Asian countries. The Obama administration is being accused of weakening an international convention banning cluster bombs at a key international meeting in Geneva. Member states of the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons have gathered to finalize a legally binding protocol. The U.S. has played a key role in the talks, despite refusing to join the convention, reportedly pushing a proposal that would allow the use of all cluster munitions made after 1980. Steve Goose of the Cluster Munitions Coalition slammed the U.S. stance.
We have governments here this week and next week negotiating a new international treaty on cluster munitions with much lower standards. This has never happened before in international humanitarian law, where you have a treaty that has been agreed by the majority of the world's nations with very high standards, and then states get together and try to negotiate an alternative treaty with very low standards. We find this outrageous.
The Pentagon has confirmed it's received massive new bunker-busting bombs capable of destroying underground sites, including Iran's nuclear facilities. The 30,000-pound bombs are 6 times the size of the Air Force's current arsenal of bunker busters. Afghan President Hamid Karzai has renewed calls for the U.S. to end night raids on Afghan homes. Karzai said a halt to the raids would be a precondition for any new military deal with his government.
We want a strategic partnership, but with specific conditions. Our national integrity, no night raids, no house searches. They must not have their own prisons on our soil. This is our country. The prisons here must be under the control of our Ministry of Interior and Justice. If they want military partnership, we are ready to give them. That is in our national interest. Their military establishment will put in money and training of our soldiers. We are ready to sign the agreement if they accept these conditions.
Syrian troops have made a number of arrests in the restive province of Hama following an attack by army defectors on a military site near Damascus. 8 Syrian troops were reportedly killed in the assault, one of the boldest so far to target the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Meanwhile, the Arab League has affirmed its decision to suspend Syria over the crackdown and has given Assad 3 days to end the violence or face economic sanctions. In Kuwait, dozens of protesters forced their way into parliament Wednesday in a rare protest against government corruption. Kuwait's ruling Al-Sabah family has faced growing scrutiny over allegations officials have transferred state funds to overseas bank accounts. Republican presidential hopeful Newt Gingrich has refused to confirm how much he was paid while working as a consultant to the mortgage giant Freddie Mac. It was revealed this week Gingrich received up to $1.8 million in consulting fees from Freddie Mac over an 8-year span beginning in 1999. Freddie Mac played a key role in the nation's financial meltdown, was taken over by the federal government in 2008. The disclosure has drawn scrutiny in part because of Gingrich's previous criticism of other politicians who've taken money from Freddie Mac. In 2008, Gingrich called on President Obama to return all donations from the company, and just last month, he called for the jailing of Congressmember Barney Frank, citing his ties to Freddie Mac. Gingrich made the comment in a televised debate.
The fix was put in by the federal government. And if you want to put people in jail, I want to second what Michelle said. You ought to start with Barney Frank and Chris Dodd, and let's look at the politicians who created the environment, the politicians who profited from the environment, and the politicians who put this country in trouble.
Clearly you're not saying they should go to jail.
Well, in Chris Dodd's case, go back and look at the countryside deals. In Barney Frank's case, go back and look at the lobbyists he was close to at Freddie Mac.
On Wednesday, Gingrich tried to cite his work for Freddie Mac as a boost for his White House bid, saying, quote, "It reminds people that I know a great deal about Washington." In other campaign news, the 2.1 million strong Services Employees International Union, or SEIU, has given an early endorsement to President Obama's re-election bid. In a video statement, SEIU President Mary Kay Henry offered backing to Obama by invoking the Occupy Wall Street movement.
And we agree all across SEIU that we need to stand for a 99% agenda and re-elect our president, Barack Obama, and that those two steps are on the same path that we've been taking in building a new movement for social and economic justice in our country, so that we can make the 2012 election about the agenda for the 99%.
And a 21-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of firing shots near the White House last week. The suspect, Oscar Ramiro Ortega Hernandez, had been wanted for questioning after a bullet hit a White House window on Friday. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our